And showtime. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. Look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel. My name is Rich Freeman. I'm the executive editor of the ChannelPro Network. With me, as always, on 5-Minute Roundup is my co-host, Erick Simpson, who is CIO and Senior Vice President of SPC International, a training and business improvement organization for managed service providers and other IT providers. Erick, how goes it?
Goes fantastic. I'm ready to celebrate Easter with the family and hide and find some eggs. How about you?
Sounds good. Yeah, heading into a holiday weekend. I like it. I like it. For me, it's Passover, but good stuff all around.
Excellent.
Well, let's dive into our big story of the week. There's actually quite a lot of news in the industry this week, but the story I decided to focus in on this time around was SonicWall introducing a managed service security, or managed security service provider, rather, partner program, an MSSP partner program, which is sort of a track within their larger partner program right now, as opposed to something entirely separate. But it's kind of interesting to me that they really see a need and feel the need to build an MSSP channel right now. And what they told me when I spoke to them about it basically is this is coming from the customer. This is not just their read on the market, although it aligns with their read on the market, but they are hearing and seeing a lot of demand from customers for help from MSPs with security services. And their read on the logic behind this is pretty compelling. Basically, security issues are growing more and more complex. They're not going away anytime soon. Security expertise, we all know, is hugely expensive, and so SMBs especially can't really afford to have it on staff, even if they have an IT department. So it's all about partners. Partners have to be the ones who come in to provide these security services for SMBs, and that means building a managed security service provider channel, and that is what SonicWall is doing with this program. So in addition to the usual kinds of goodies that you would expect in a partner program in terms of deal registration and discounted licensing and so on, one of the features of the program that they really wanted to call attention to was these blueprints, as they call them, that really spell out step by step what you've got to do to become an MSSP and then run that business profitably. And so it's sort of another indication of the role they're taking on for themselves as this MSSP channel builder, basically. And then the other thing that's interesting, I think, about this program is SonicWall says they understand not everyone in their channel is going to want to become an MSSP, but they're probably all going to need to be offering MSSP services to their customers or risk losing customers. And so what they're also doing at SonicWall is setting up a sort of partnering with partner program where an MSP who doesn't want to offer managed security services themselves will be able to offer somebody else's MSSP services on a white label basis. So they'll be connecting their own channel partners with other channel partners to make sure everybody has access to MSSP services.
Yeah, and I think that this is it's brilliant how they've designed this program, because they've identified, I think, the typical bottlenecks that we find in our channel for resellers, VAR solution providers, MSPs adopting new services and new technologies. First of all, they need to know exactly what they need to do, and they need to be trained on how to do it. And many of them won't dip their toe in the water unless they all in, unless they see a true dramatic change that can happen within their organization. So I think the brilliance around the program is these blueprints, the training that comes with those, and then this partner to partner program where, now you have a certified, trained, authorized SonicWall partner that you can now engage with to help architect and deliver these services. So I think that provides a comfort level to existing partners. And again, for those folks that, come across a security opportunity every once in a while, I think it's a great way for them not to leave money on the table and to engage and feel the comfort that they're really getting that support from a trained, certified SonicWall partner. And then as they learn the ropes over time, they do a couple more of these things, then that might, generate the interest in them to go ahead and become certified themselves and begin, taking more of this load on. So I think it's a great strategy for SonicWall.
And I think that comfort level point is really critical because a lot of channel pros get nervous partnering with other channel pros. They worry about maybe losing an account to somebody who comes in initially just to do security and takes over everything else. If you're getting in touch with these MSSPs through SonicWall, and if SonicWall is essentially selling services on their behalf, on behalf of these other partners, they're really not going to want to mess that up. And so, you can have a comfort basically that they're going to know what they're doing, but also that they're not going to poach your clients, because if they do, SonicWall is going to find out about it right away, and that'll be the end of that very quickly.
Right. Exactly.
Well, speaking of comfort levels, your tech or your business tip for the week has to do with something that a lot of channel pros aren't so comfortable doing. What's that?
So today's tip focuses around the importance of asking the budget question during the sales qualifying process. And as you know, Rich, we work with tons and tons of partners and helping them improve many areas of their businesses, but specifically the sales improvement portion. And I'm surprised every time that we're analyzing a partner sales process and ask the question, okay, when do you ask the budget question during the qualifying process? And many of them have built up in their mind, I believe, just this, this tension or awkwardness around asking what kind of budget can a prospect invest in solving these problems. And so today I want to talk about how to ask that question in a natural manner to take away some of that stigma, some of that awkwardness, some of that, reticence to ask the question. Because, when we're uncomfortable asking the budget question, guess what happens? We don't ask it at all. And that's the worst thing that can happen, because now we're creating proposals and we're doing presentations for these prospects. And then we hit them with a number or price tag that can cause sticker shock to them, something that they weren't expecting. And it's really difficult to overcome that kind of an outcome during the sales process without having to feel like, okay, now I have to negotiate on price, which is, the number one no-no. We never negotiate on price if we're selling our solutions based on value. So here are a couple of simple questions or simple ways to ask the budget question. I'm going to refer to one of my recent slide decks that I just created for this training. So I would ask a prospect, how do you handle budget considerations? Right? That's really simple. It's an easy way to just, get it out there. How do you handle budget considerations? Or whose budget will support this initiative? Right? How will our engagement get funded? And again, I'm asking it in a very natural conversational tone. Remember, this is, in the qualifying phase. I've already warmed up the prospect. I've gained their trust and confidence. And now we're qualifying them for, the last thing we qualify for is budget. We qualified for need and pain. And let's face it, if the client, can't afford to pay for our services, then, we need to rethink moving forward with the engagement with them. And sometimes this is one of the reasons why we find partners with, pipelines that just never seem to, to get emptied, because they haven't qualified properly. And sometimes it's the price, it's the budget that gets in the way. What sort of budget do you have in mind, right? Are funds allocated or must they be requested? That's a little stiff. So, take these and make them your own. What is your expectation of the investment required to solve these pains, right? And here's one of my favorites, okay? Does your budget to solve these problems match the severity of the problems, right? Because sometimes, the client thinks, okay, I've got to fix this one thing. But when we get in there and we start qualifying them, we start, uncovering not only those active pains, but also the latent needs. And it's our job as sales professionals to raise the priority or the urgency of those latent needs, right? To build that buying temperature and accelerate sales velocity. So when I ask that question, I'm really asking them to rethink what they originally thought they were going to budget, because now we've uncovered all these other pains. Does your budget to solve these problems match the severity of the problems that we've just uncovered, perhaps, right? What is your range on this? I mean, in a perfect world, what is the minimum amount you'd like to see me get this done for? Then what's the maximum you could possibly put into it if it became absolutely necessary? Again, just some simple questions to just feel feel around to see if the client, number one, is strategic enough to have thought about budget. And if not, how much do we have to lead them through that discussion? And again, take the tension and the stress away from it. And we've got to get an idea. Even if the client says, I have no idea what kind of budget I can put together, then we can try a few trial closes and say, well, for solving these kinds of situations for other clients of ours, we've typically been able to do it within this range. Is that something that we can find budget for? I use the word find, right? Because I may not have it laying around, but if it's important enough for me, and I've now built that sense of urgency, I'll try to find the budget. Now, if there's ROI as a result of this, then typically we can find budget, right? If we're helping improve some efficiencies or some process that, helps them grow revenue, for sure, if we can tie back an ROI analysis to that solution to say, okay, look, here's the ROI and here's how much you will benefit beyond that. Can we find budget for that? Then that typically opens the door for further discussion.
And like you say, I mean, these are all questions you can ask in the midst of a conversation that don't need to be, really shouldn't be awkward. It's not about, asking for money, basically, which makes everybody uncomfortable. You're just collecting information. It's the point of the conversation at that point. And one of the critical pieces of information that you need and that everybody needs to move ahead is to understand how much money is available to spend on this project.
Right. And one last thing I'll add is, okay, so let's say that there's not a lot of budget available. Then once you understand that, then you can pivot the conversation to say, okay, well, we're going to need to find some more budget later, but maybe we can phase improvement in. Would you be interested in hearing how we might be able to do that? So phase one could encompass this. And I think we can make that work within this budget. And then we can talk about phase two at a later date. How does that sound? Right? So again, just letting us know where we are so that we don't come in with a proposal that's just so far out of, the possibility of their budget that, we basically burn a relationship before we even get started.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, great stuff. Great concrete, practical tips. Thank you, Eric. And we've got time for one more story here. And some of this might just have appealed to me because I'm an editor. I don't know if anyone else is really going to be into this or not, but there were two stories this week involving Microsoft and language that kind of jumped out at me. And one of them had to do with some changes to their standard service agreement at Microsoft that basically allows them to keep anyone employing offensive language off of Skype and Office 365 and these other platforms. And of course, what they're really kind of trying to do is give themselves an out in case somebody is engaging in abuse or hate speech or something like that. They now have something in the service agreement that allows them to bar that person. But it certainly kind of raises to mind the idea of people who are using Microsoft software and maybe cursing loudly at the blue screen of death, now not, having that option according to the Microsoft service agreement. Basically, they've locked you away from that too. And then the other logic thing. So, think what you want about that, but a huge thumbs up for this other Microsoft language related story this week. They published a new set of guidelines to their writers internally, the people who write for their website and write their manuals and so on. And they laid out a whole bunch of different kind of rules and guidelines that they boiled down to these 4 master rules. And the fourth of those master rules basically was always use the Oxford comma. Now, the Oxford comma is that extra comma if you're doing, A, B, and C. The comma after B is the Oxford comma. And as an editor, I am 125% in favor of the Oxford comma. It clarifies. Ladies and gentlemen, always, always use it. Microsoft, thank you for reinforcing that message.
Well, that's one tip that I will begin adopting because I always leave the Oxford comma off of that last before the end. So I will be adjusting my process in light of that. Now, on the first one where Microsoft is trying to, like you say, create some buffer between them or protection, or saying, look, if you begin violating these policies, profanity, criminal activity, violence, we can kick you off of our platforms. I'm sure the gamers on this listening to this can immediately think back to Xbox Live, because I'll tell you a quick story. So I walk in and my son, he's 16 and he's Xbox Live, gaming, and he's laughing. And I walk in, I go, "What is so funny?" He says, "You got to hear this kid." And I held the headphone up to my ear, and the most profane litany of English language is coming spewing from this kid. And I go, "How old is this kid?" My son says he's 10 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway.
Hey, Mom and Dad, I learned it on Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, now when they ask him why his account got banned, he's going to have to fess up. But anyway.
Well, all right. That is our show for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back again next week. Until then, I encourage you to subscribe to the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube. You can keep up to date with our latest episodes and upcoming ones. You can get lots of content about what's going on in the industry and the news, more information about that SonicWall announcement we were talking about before on the ChannelProNetwork.com website. That's our homepage. For more information about Eric and the services he provides, go to consulting.spc-intl.com. That's consulting.spc-intl.com. So until next week, I'm Rich Freeman with Eric Simpson, wishing you a very good week. We encourage you to enjoy the rest of your week because we are enjoying the rest of your week already.